A couple of years ago, I told pretty much everyone I was building a social media marketing agency. And I was so serious about it that I would genuinely get mad at people who, doubted it. I remember telling my friends, my family, even random people I would meet in university or, just someone I wasn't that close to. I would say something, yeah, I'm building an agency. Look how cool I am. I've been working on it every day. And the funny thing is, I actually believe that. If you would ask me back then if I was working hard, I would have probably said yes without even thinking. And just look at this, how beautiful the sun is after the rain. I just can't help but enjoy this. Anyway, but yeah, a while ago I looked back at those 2 years and realized something that, honestly made me laugh. I never actually built an agency. Instead, I built the idea of having an agency. I spent 2 weeks trying to come up with a perfect name. I was actually considering buying a domain name. I designed like 100 different variants of the logo, made a website, started an Instagram page and, lots and lots of other things. I even spent hours reading how to register an LLC in the United States, which is kind of hilarious because I didn't have a single dollar behind my name back then and not a single client. So basically I was solving the problems that, belonged to a version of me that didn't even exist yet. And somehow that felt so productive. I generally felt like I was moving forward back then. Looking back now, I don't think I even sent enough outreach messages to actually know whether I liked running an agency in the first place. So what it looked like is that I was building everything except the core business, developing the core idea. And eventually, you sort of become more aware of how purposeless all of that work was once there is no actual change brought into your life. And I just stopped caring, not because something happened, not because I failed. In fact, I actually think I didn't fail enough, and that's also a problem. Instead, it just, quietly became something past me used to do. That's actually the same thing I talked about last time. How our brains file away old version of us, so easily. Something I could say after I quit would be, oh yeah, that was agency me. Almost like it happened to somebody else. And eventually that got me thinking, why does this keep happening? Because, this wasn't the only project I put on a shelf in my life. I've done this with lots of things. I've done this with apps, with YouTube channels, with businesses, and every single time the beginning felt incredible. And I feel like it's not because I was making money or was fulfilled in any way from doing this, and also not because anyone cared, because nobody really cared about what I was doing. They just wanted to see the result, but just because everything still felt possible. Right? And that's when I realized maybe I wasn't really addicted to new ideas. Maybe I was addicted to building identities. Because starting a business doesn't just give you a project. It also gives you a new version of yourself. You're no longer just you. You're suddenly, the aspiring founder, the agency owner, the guy building an app, whatever. And for a while, just imagining that person feels surprisingly satisfying and fulfilling. Until eventually that identity alone isn't enough anymore. Because eventually, as it always does, reality catches up, and reality doesn't care what your logo looks like or what your domain sounds like. It wants you to actually send the outreach, make the calls, get rejected 100 times. Just keep showing up. And that's the point where my excitement usually disappears. Yours probably too, if you watch till this moment. Not because the idea got worse, because, this fantasy finally turned into real work. And now I'm actually trying something different. Whenever I catch myself spending, an hour choosing fonts or, planning this year 3 of a business that doesn't even have a draft on a napkin. I stop and ask myself one simple question. What would make this project real today? It's really simple. No, not next month, not, after I register an LLC, not after somebody replies to my hundreds and hundreds of DMs on Instagram, but today. And you have to be ready for the answer, because it's almost always painfully boring. Because it would be something like send 10 emails, post the first video, launch the ugly version or whatever MVP you have, talk to one customer, get feedback, improve and repeat. And honestly, those answers are usually, from my experience, never exciting. But I'm starting to think that it is exactly the point here. Maybe the projects that actually change your life either never exciting or usually never stay exciting for a long time, right? I remember watching this Steve Jobs movie, and how movies always show you the polished version of someone else's story. The breakthroughs, the product launches, the standing ovations, like all of the movie classics. But I always found myself wondering about, everything that they don't show. For example, what was he thinking on an ordinary Tuesday? Did he ever, wake up and think, honestly, I don't feel like working on this today? Did he ever get bored? Or, wonder if whether all of this was even worth it? And obviously Steve Jobs was a completely different person from me and probably you, unless you're Tim Cook watching right now. But he was a difficult person by many accounts, right? And 100 of circumstances made his life nothing like yours and mine. But we're still human. We share common traits. We still have the same brain that craves comfort, novelty, excitement. And I guess here I can't help but wonder if the thing that separated people like him, wasn't that he stayed excited longer. Maybe they just, didn't leave the idea the second it got boring, right? Anyway, that's just another weird thing I've been noticing about my brain lately. If you can relate, I'm glad. I'm glad. And if yours does something similar, or you notice some unusual patterns different from other people, I would genuinely love to know if you're caught doing yourself something like this, or something differently, if you're neurodivergent basically. So let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want more of videos like this, and see you soon. Bye.